Welcome to the Binary Agora. I'm your host, Alba Rivera Martinez, and today we have a really special guest, Rolands Mesters, and maybe you have not heard of him because he was busy building European tech, but he's the co-founder and also the CEO of BirdyChat, a modern work chat app for professionals that launched a week ago in Europe on both iOS and Android. Welcome to the Agora, Rolands.
Thank you so much, Alba. It's an absolute pleasure.
The pleasure is absolutely ours. And for the audience, I am going to try to briefly introduce what a BirdyChat actually is. So it's a messaging service particularly tailored to professional that has become a matter of pride for the European Commission's enforcement with regards to the Digital Markets Act, the DMA. And it is the first messaging services provider to fully interoperate with Meta's WhatsApp under the horizontal interoperability obligation under Article 7 of the DMA. First of all, I wanted to ask you, Roland, whether the idea to build BirdyChat predated the DMA's adoption or your knowledge of it, or whether you saw in the DMA a really good business opportunity to seize in order to roll out those ideas into the market.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. The idea behind BirdyChat actually kind of came from both of those things at the same time. So myself and my co-founder, Martins, we've been looking into the messaging space for a couple of years. We've been big fans of messaging technologies in the past. We were very excited every time something new came out. We've been following the space, and what we saw in the space was that team communication has mostly been solved. There have been a lot of different solutions for teams if they want to communicate with one another. What we did also notice is that external communication in the professional setting was mostly done over email. Very recently, a lot of this communication was kind of bleeding into the personal chat up space. In my previous life, I was a co-founder of a fintech startup that was built in an open banking space, which is another European regulation, PSD2. And as a founder of a startup, I noticed that I was receiving a lot of work messages in my personal chat apps. And I used to use these chat apps only for my friends and family. I increasingly had to use them also to reply to different work messages. And so this is where the idea was very, very much coming from. From one side, we were thinking about this idea, but from the other side, when we noticed Digital Markets Act, when we noticed that interoperability is actually possible, that was the final trigger that made us quit whatever we were doing and start BirdyChat. It's kind of a it's mix of both. One is the idea that, hey, there is a need for novel communication tools, but also the fact that interoperability is possible in Europe has been a massive driver for this motivation to start BirdyChat.
I was actually wondering, so whether you were able to learn from some of the regulatory interaction you already had in the fintech space to now the DMA space?
There's definitely some learnings. To take a step back, open banking was Europe's attempt to make banking somewhat interoperable to some degree. What the major difference was between Digital Markets Act, Article 7 and PSD2 was that PSD2 was attempting to create open banking across a lot of players. And so there were something like 5,000 banks and plus a few thousand payment institutions that all needed to build an open API to follow some standards. And here there was something very similar, but instead of thousands of players, there was literally, currently there's only one. When I looked at Digital Markets Act, what I noticed was that, hey, this kind of looks like open banking, but it's somewhat simpler. Not just somewhat, like substantially simpler. And open banking, it's already live. There's like lots of learnings. One of the learnings was that the early adoption by the regulated entities was fragmented. There were some entities who were incredible from day one, and their APIs were fantastic. And there were others who still to this day, the APIs might be a bit glitchy. And it was very helpful that we had this experience in building in a regulated space. My co-founder had been working on communication technologies before, so he was very much aware of how and what to expect from this interoperability. And so that knowledge was incredibly valuable. Yes, absolutely.
I assume since you also had this intuition of working on something you already knew of and building on the DMA opportunities opened by this new wave of digital regulation, you were actually like quite bold because you started negotiating with Meta when you were building your app. I wanted to know how easy was it to fully interoperate with the gatekeepers messaging services, and how those dialogues worked in practice?
To take a step back, interoperability, if you read all the public documentation and all the requirements necessary from the the third party, which is someone like BirdyChat, there's a lot of both technical and design decisions that need to be made. For us, we were lucky that we started our integration with WhatsApp. We started very early. That meant that as we were thinking about this interoperability, we could also think about how to shape the user experience on our application to make it make sense. And that allowed us to basically design the BirdyChat experience, as well as how the interoperability is going to work, knowing how it's going to work also on Meta side, because all of the documentation was public. That was incredibly helpful. And kind of thinking, why are there not more interoperable apps on the market? I think that part of this is just that, well, it's to become interoperable, it has to make sense for your user base. The user experience has to be good. That means that anyone who would want to become interoperable and they have some legacy code, or maybe they have a certain user experience, there's lots of design decisions that need to be made alongside the technical decisions. So to summarize, I think we got very lucky about the fact that we actually started very early, and that we could shape the BirdyChat experience alongside this interoperability integration, which was very helpful.
As opposed to your experience only as a hypothetical, I was wondering if you already had built BirdyChat prior to the DMA's introduction, how would you try to design or draw the necessary lines to get to Article 7 DMA interoperability if you were a pre-existing player?
I think it's different for different apps, right? For us, we already made some design decisions where we need to think, okay, how does this going to work? I'll give you one example. BirdyChat uses email addresses as usernames. And in our world, it makes absolute sense. BirdyChat is a professional messaging app. Our users are professionals. Professionals use email a lot to interact with one another. They're very used to using email. And so using an email as a username just makes absolute sense. And in our world, BirdyChat experience can be built around usernames as emails. And then we have to make this interoperability with WhatsApp, who on the other side uses phone numbers as usernames. And even the small little detail, what kind of usernames do you use and on which platform, there needs to be enough of guidance on BirdyChat side for our users to understand that, well, you use your email as the username, and that's the username that's going to appear on the WhatsApp side as well. We need to educate them about what's going to happen. Even small things like that can make a very big impact. I'm sure that for other apps, there's other things. There are features that only exist in some apps which are unique to the app experience because of how interoperability works. They might not be available on the interoperable chats, on third-party chats. For us, we were lucky that we had started so early. That meant that we could think about what is the BirdyChat experience, what is the third-party chat experience, and how to guide our users to think about each of those to help them understand what's going to happen when they use each of those connections.
I was saying that because some business users from the DMA have really voiced out their concern with regards to how Article 7 is applied, specifically, for instance, for pre-existing players, because they spotted that there's maybe a lack of demand, or the security and privacy issues are not quite resolved by the gatekeeper. But in any case, going back to the actual results and the actual process of it, the DMA is actually expected to deliver outcomes for consumers and also business users such as BirdyChat alike by opening these business opportunities to the market that were formerly closed to these competitors in the market, precisely because of what you were saying, that there's only one player that actually amasses all of this market share within the messaging service market. In principle, the European Commission, the regulator in charge of applying the DMA, is not compelled to intervene in every single instance where business users interact with the gatekeepers. In your particular case, when you were interacting via the negotiation with Meta, how have you found the European Commission's role in all of this process, and whether you think that there is some room for improvement in terms of the effectiveness of horizontal interoperability?
We are not policy experts. We are builders, and our job is to build an application and make sure that our users get value from this application. Having European Commission make it simple for someone like us to understand how interoperability works is absolutely critical. And I think they're doing a fantastic job. I think the materials that exist online to help understand what Article 7 is, what to expect from it, a lot of the open questions that one might have about how this works, I think those questions can be quite easily answered. The other thing is that for apps like us, to want to make the investment into building interoperability, we need to know that it will be enforced. This means that we need to be confident that the investments that we're making, we will be able to have enough time to amortize this and be able to generate value from this investment. Right now, we are absolutely confident that this will be enforced, and I think that European Commission has done a wonderful job in building this confidence. So clearly, this is the early days. BirdyChat was the first app to become interoperable. We will not be the only app. There will be new apps, I'm sure, who will also become interoperable, and not just with WhatsApp, because WhatsApp is not the only app that's available. I am certain that there will be different stories for different apps. Our story was quite simple. Like, we knew exactly what we wanted to build. We managed to design it in a way that we could get value from interoperability, and our users could enjoy the benefits of interoperability as well as the benefits of using BirdyChat for their professional use cases. I'm sure there will be new learnings as new companies come to the market. But like, for now, I have to say, information-wise, there's been plenty of information to get started. Confidence-wise, we feel that this will be enforced, and which gives us confidence to want to do more to make our app more interoperable over time, which I think is the two very important bits of the job that is to be done for someone like European Commission.
Confidence-wise, as you were saying, the European Commission basically having your back in terms of enforcement, be that through informal dialogues or even engaging in a regulatory dialogue through specification proceedings or non-compliance procedures, makes you feel that your investment is quote-unquote secured with regards to what you have really put into the DMA's enforcement as well, right?
Confidence comes from multiple signals, right? Like, clearly, media is a very strong signal. We have seen that European Commission has been very active on media to try and educate, first of all, the citizens about what Digital Markets Act is. It is a wonderful piece of regulation that is changing a lot of Europeans' lives for the better and giving us more choice, but barely anyone knows about it. And so European Commission is doing a wonderful job to educate people about this. And through this education, we also see that the investment they're making in this education clearly is a signal for the fact that they want to continue enforcing this. Even things like that, these small signals, they can compound over time. These are important, and they will continue to be important for not just us, but I think for anyone that wants to make the investment to leverage the benefits of DMA, and not just Article 7, but across the board.
Getting into the nitty-gritty of the service, this works on one-on-one conversations or on group chats, because we know that the Article 7 DMA is an expanding provisions. First, Meta was forced to publish this reference of with regards to one-to-one conversations and chats between two individuals, and now it has to expand that into group chats. How are you planning for that? How do you expect BirdyChat to also grow as a consequence?
We have now introduced one-on-one chats on BirdyChat side for WhatsApp interoperability. On BirdyChat network, you can have both one-on-one or group chats, of course, but for interoperability with WhatsApp, we only have one-on-one chats. And right now, we're in a phase where we're still testing and learning from user feedback how users perceive this feature. I have to say, this is a completely new feature. And it's been interesting to see even people who are very technical. For them, it takes a while to understand how this actually works, and interoperability. We're completely used to it from email, right? So I'm using Gmail. You might be using something else, and we kind of don't think like who's using what. Email just works, and it's fully interoperable, and we don't even think about interoperability. There's no such term when we're like sending an email. But in this messaging space right now, because the chat app networks have been so siloed, interoperability has to be a word that people understand, and it takes a while for people to understand the concept. So we are right now learning ourselves. We're learning from the users. Our users are learning. They're giving us feedback on what works, where we can improve the BirdyChat user experience to help them understand what's going to happen. That being said, we're incredibly excited about the chance to expand this to group chat and interoperability, and that's something we'll definitely want to do as soon as we feel we understand how this ought to work. That would be a good moment to expand also in group chat interoperability.
But let's remind everyone that you are basically on the hype now of having launched recently the app, so that you have loads of work to do with regards to how users interact with the app. Although I'm really keen to know a bit about what have you heard from users, what is working and what is not with regards to interoperability.
What our users love is the fact that interoperability exists. We have received numerous messages, both on BirdyChat and also on email, of people saying that they're very excited that this interoperability exists. So that I think is an absolute, absolute treasure. It's a wonderful asset that the European Commission has granted the market. Where I think we're still learning is the idea of what the technical implementation should look on BirdyChat side, specifically to the idea of emails as usernames versus phone numbers as usernames. That I think is something that we will have to continue learning how to do it right. A fairly good job right now to explain how this works. I'm sure we can do much better. And I think as we are entering the group chat interoperability phase, there will also be an interesting take on like how to make it make sense from the user experience perspective. Again, it's going to be different. I think we're very used to the fact that you create a group chat. You tap on the people you want to invite, and the group chat exists. And because DMA works through opt-in sort of functionality, people have to give their very explicit consent that they want their account to become interoperable with third-party chats. This means that the experience will not be as smooth, at least in the early days, for kind of tapping on people and creating a group chat. Designing around the limitations and thinking of what are the ways to make the experience as coherent and simple as possible. That's going to be an interesting challenge. But we're very optimistic. Like you said, we came live last week. It's still early days. The team is incredibly excited. It's exciting to see real people use the app and give us real feedback. We're very, very optimistic about the future.
Let's say that in a hypothetical world, Article 7 DMA works so well that gatekeepers are incentivized to open the scope of the provision, not only to the EU, but abroad. I was wondering whether that's something you would consider. Is that something that you would welcome? And whether you were thinking of expanding this functionality not only to interoperate with Meta, or do you believe that also the capacity to interoperate with other services could in the end improve the overall service?
Coming back to like the scope and coverage is absolutely critical to communication. If email only worked in Europe, that would not be as valuable a tool as it is right now. So that same thing applies to messaging, and the value of the network is very much a function of the number of participants. So if there would be a chance to see interoperability expand to more countries outside of European Economic Area, then that would be a very welcome change. I would love to see that. I would also love to see that there would be more companies made interoperable, and ideally they would not be made interoperable, but they would find reasons to become interoperable as opposed to being made interoperable. There's nothing that prohibits any of the other big tech companies to become interoperable, and I think that might be a really welcome change for companies like us. Again, that would give us the chance to expand the network, and that would give us a chance to become more competitive in a market that is quite competitive itself.
Finally, so talking about the results produced by the launching of BirdyChat, has horizontal interoperability as provided in the DMA proved important to the uptake of BirdyChat? How so? And if not, what could be improved?
I would say it's an absolute win. First of all, the fact that BirdyChat exists is, I think, a testament to the fact that Digital Markets Act is providing value to the market. Secondly, we get a lot of positive feedback from our users who are excited that BirdyChat is interoperable with third-party chats. And I think a lot of users have been wanting this feature, and there has just not been any availability of something like that. So we get these positive signals. It's the first feedback that we received from users has been very encouraging, and it makes us want to do more in this space rather than less, which I think is kind of the point of all this.
Thank you so much, Roland, for sharing your experience. We will also be, of course, downloading BirdyChat now, interoperating with WhatsApp, linking our emails to BirdyChat, and seeing how that works in the end, and also following all of the rollouts that you may improve within the service, and also expect that the European Commission does not need to trigger any non-compliance procedure nor any specification proceeding with regards to how Meta is complying. But in any case, thank you so much for coming in the Agora and sharing your insights.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.